Hello, everybody. My name is Liliana Rangel-Parra. I'm from the University of Washington within the School of Environmental and Forest Sciences, and I'm excited to share my talk today titled Composition and Diversity of Early-Seral Forest Communities Vary with Burn Severity and Pre-Fire Stand Age Following Fire in Western Cascadia. First, I'd like to start off with a quick round of acknowledgements. I'd like to thank the collaborators that I have the honor of working with on the larger PNW Westside Fire Initiative project. I'd like to thank my committee members, funding, and the support of the Harvey Lab and field crews. For without all these people, this work would not be possible. To set the stage, as we're familiar with, increased fire activity in the Western Cascadia region is providing us new opportunities to explore the short-term dynamics of forest regeneration following fire. And this is particularly important considering how rare fire-generated early-seral habitat is in this region, comprising less than 0.1% of the forest condition in this region. So what comes after fire? These complex early-seral forest communities. These are the plants that occupy the forest directly following fire up until tree canopy closure and dominance. And as you can see along this lifespan, the lifespan of these forests in this region, this is really a short window in time at this green box to be able to study these complex early-seral forests. These dynamics in this complex early-seral forests are rapid and dynamic. You can see 1 year to 3 year to 5 years post-fire, an array of differences in abundance and dominance of herbs and shrubs. As well, another complication is the fact that these species are short-lived, and so going into a stand, 150-year-old stand, you can use the trees to look back retrospectively to see how forests came back following fire, but that's evidence of the understory species is lost, so we aren't able to gain insights unless we have these complex early-seral forests to study. Temporally, they're diverse, but spatially, they're also incredibly variable and diverse within the region of Western Cascadia, within a single fire perimeter, all the way up until the same mountain ridge and just opposite aspects. You can have incredibly variable different plant community responses. This high level of plant diversity in the complex early-seral forests scales up to diversity across a range of taxa in these ecosystems. And this also scales up to diverse ecosystem provisions and human ecological relationships in the Western Cascadia region following fire. So zooming in, what is driving these differences in these plant communities? Well, looking at other regions, we found that pre-fire stand age helps dictate the ingredients going into fire. So you can imagine that fire burning a young stand versus a late-seral stand will dictate potentially shade tolerance of species going into the fire. And what comes out of the fire as a result is burn severity, or that change in vegetation caused by fire. So you could imagine either greater continuity of plant species in a low-severity fire, or greater change after high-severity fire. So to address these knowledge gaps and questions, although relatively little is known about early-seral forest regeneration in general, what is more known is about conifer regeneration than the understory plant species. As well, we are not certain how these two predictor variables will affect the complex early-seral plant communities in Western Cascadia. So I'm going to ask, in Western Cascadia, how does community composition and diversity within and among stands vary with pre-fire stand age and burn severity? For the approach, this is, again, part of that larger, broader collaborative project. We're establishing 165 post-fire monitoring plots across Western Washington and Oregon in 8 notable fires. However, for my slice of the data, I'll be focusing in on these 4 fires that are bolded and burned sometime between 2015 and 2018. We sampled them 2020 and 2021, and that gave us a range of 3 to 5 years post-fire for this data. Across this region, we set up 86 1-hectare plots stratified by those 2 predictor variables. So pre-fire stand age was binned into young, mid-seral, and late-seral, and burn severity was binned into unburned, low severity, and high severity. And unburned is sort of our pre-fire analog to be able to compare with other burn stands. In each plot, we had 12 subplots. We identified the species all herbs, shrubs, and deciduous trees, and then we visually estimated the ground cover percent, sort of what you can see on top here, to see how dominant each species was. Overall, there was 206 species present across all conditions, unburned and burned. 84% of those species were found in post-fire conditions, and 40% of those species were unique to post-fire conditions, which is a pretty significant proportion. So getting into that first question on community composition, I'm going to be going over an NMDS ordination, and I'll help break this down in a second. But focusing in on the lighter dots that are smaller, each of those is a plot, and essentially the closer they are to each other in space, the more similar their composition, the farther apart they are, the more different their composition. And then taking into account those two predictor variables as a combination. For example, this larger, more opaque symbol, this blue circle, is showing the young unburned mean response. And so again, I'll help break this down. So this blue hole is showing our unburned stands, pink is low severity, and this darker red is high severity. And then the symbols are denoting the pre-fire stand age. So circle is going from young, unburned to high severity. Triangle is mid-seral, unburned to low to high, and square is late-seral, unburned to low to high. And to get into some of the takeaways of this finding, we found that regardless of severity, fire was a catalyst in shifting composition away from this unburned community composition. So you can see that there's really little overlap between the blue and then the pink and red community composition. However, there was a narrower range in community composition in low severity stands relative to high severity stands, which had a lot wider range in plant community composition. So high severity fire may act as more of a catalyst for stochastic responses, whereas low severity fire might be more of a selective filter of community composition. To get into diversity, we looked at species richness, which is the raw count of species present in each plot. And then we looked at Shannon Diversity Index to give us a sense of evenness. And regardless, richness and evenness was consistently high within plots, despite the different compositional differences that I just covered in the previous question. The one exception to this was the unburned mid-seral species richness, which was relatively low to significantly lower than 3 other combinations, but also just lower in general. And this might be due to the fact that mid-seral unburned conditions are, as we know, really dense canopies, let in very little light to the understory, and so therefore might be limiting how many species are able to be present. So together, we have high richness and evenness within stands, as well as high compositional differences in beta diversity among stands. And to conclude, within stand diversity was high for most combinations. Compositional differences, on the other hand, were strongly driven by burn severity, leading to high among stand diversity in these burned landscapes. And finally, the unburned mid-seral forests, which is currently the most abundant condition in Western Cascadia, was relatively low in species diversity, but when they did burn, they got the biggest boost in species diversity. These 3 takeaways will help us document a baseline of complex early-seral forest recovery, especially in light of potential changes in climate and fire activity in Western Cascadia. As well, this will help us build an understanding to foster and manage these early-seral habitats in this landscape, considering how rare they are. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to questions coming up soon.